welcome to the Serious Football Heads podcast, episode number 3, where we're going to be talking about the draft, the mock draft, and also Russell Wilson's new contract that came out overnight. Today, I have with me Tom White as usual. Tom, go ahead.
Hey, good afternoon, everybody. Hope everybody's having a good day. I'm getting more and more excited here. We're only, I think, 8 days away now from the NFL draft, and I get all goose pimply and tingly when this time of year comes around. I refer to it as the high holy days of the NFL.
Pretty much is. It pretty much is, because you never know what teams are going to do what.
Before we get into that, let's talk a little bit about that Mr. Russell Wilson and get that out of the way, because I can see you're chomping at the bit to
Oh, I actually have something. I was listening to the opening drive this morning with Bill Leckus and Charlie Weiss, and a guest called in right when I turned it on. That his premise made me kind of giggle, especially when Charlie Weiss agreed with it. Okay,
which was,
so how about instead of just having all 53 players under contract under the salary cap, we have an exception, one player exception, that they can have whatever salary the team's willing to pay, and it doesn't count against the
They do that in the NBA. The NBA has that. They don't have a franchise tag in the NBA. They have that one exemption, so that you can have a superstar, pay him whatever you want to pay him, and he doesn't count against the cap. So,
and Charlie Weiss said that he could see the players signing up, all the entire NFLPA signing up on this. And I see the logic behind it, because it's basically you allow your quarterback, when you find your star quarterback, pay him all sorts of money, and that leaves you room from the salary cap to pay your other players.
Yeah, or if you've got a top pass rusher or a left tackle or whoever you think is the most important person on your team at that moment in time, you designate them. I'm sure there'd have to be a limit on that designation, for 2 or 3 years, 1 year, however it would work, and then pay them whatever you want to pay them and get them on the field, and then build a team around them, because you've got that much more money in your salary cap.
Yeah, and that's the biggest thing, is like, I'm sitting there, and this is at like 5 a.m, so my brain is not entirely functioning yet. But my thought is, inherently I would agree with him. However, I can see players like, say, Earl Thomas, before he broke his leg and stuff, and Seattle, and we have this exemption in place, let's say for this year. Seattle comes in and be like, look, we know that there's been bad vibes, but we want to make you our franchise player for the year, or next couple of years, whatever the limit is set to. And we're going to pay you, say, $50 million. Guaranteed. All of it guaranteed. Could you see other safeties getting a little miffed about that, or other?
Well, I'm sure they would, but it's going to be a situation where it's a team by team basis. So
I agree with that.
If this is your star player and he's designated as the star player, then if you've got another safety on the team that's pissed off about it, well, play better.
I totally agree with that. My thought is,
I don't know what else to say to that.
My thoughts about it more along the lines when coming back to, actually, I should get the chat up, because I forgot that we're live.
I think that I don't know that it really works in the NFL, mostly because the owners have set a salary cap, ultimately because that's how much money they want to spend, and they don't want to spend any more than that.
Right, and I agree with you on that.
And even though it works to the advantage of the players, it also works to the advantage of the owners. That's one of the nice things about it. And the players have a certain amount of movement that they can enjoy, and the owners have a cap on which they can't spend any more money than that. And actually, one of the big issues here would become the rich teams and the poor teams.
Exactly.
When you've got a Dallas and a New York, or whoever else is the next in line as far as, the richest teams in the league, they're going to fare much better with that than the smaller market teams are going to fare. So that creates an unfair competitive advantage right there.
It does. And the problem that I have with it, what I foresee the real issue of it is that you're going to have players trying to utilize that as for their own salary against the cap later. So, for example, using my safety example, say pick safety from any team that's the top safety of their team, and they're like, well, I want to have X percentage of Earl Thomas's money guaranteed or whatever, basically along the same lines. The teams are going to tell them no, and then they're going to get miffed. The player's going to get miffed, and all this other stuff. That's where I see ultimately something like this going in the NFL, because it's the way it's been structured for so long. You know what I mean?
Yeah, as I think more about it, I'm actually not in favor of this. It takes it outside the salary cap, which defeats the entire purpose of the salary cap. And it does create an unfair competitive advantage for the richer teams, because the teams that have the big skyboxes and all that extra income, they can funnel that right into it. When the USFL started, they did personal service contracts. Steve Young, Doug Flutie, a couple other guys were the running back too, from Dallas, then went to Minnesota. From Georgia.
Yeah, I know who you're talking about.
I know the color of his eyes, and now I can't remember his name. Oh, Herschel Walker. Herschel Walker was also on one of these personal services contracts. So Steve Young got like a $40 million deal from the USFL, and that was guaranteed by a personal services contract. So even when the league failed, he was still collecting money,
right? Because
his salary wasn't attached to the league. That kind of competitive imbalance, I think, would be devastating for the league.
Mm-hmm. And Charlie Weis, like most people assume, is going to be the quarterback is going to be the player that's going to get this exemption.
Right. And in Russell Wilson's case, if I was Russell Wilson and that was happening, I wouldn't be negotiating. I would let my contract run out.
Mm-hmm.
All right. And you franchise tag me for 2 years. Okay. I'll let that go. Have that happen too. And now I hit the open market, and I'm going to look right at Dallas. I'm going to look right at these other richer teams and say, okay, how does 300 million? Let's start there.
Exactly.
Yeah. So I guess now that we've talked this through, no, I'm against that. I don't think that's a good idea at all in the NFL.
It's one of those things that it's a novel concept, and it sounds like it would be really a good idea, because it does free up Russell Wilson's cap hit. He's going to be freed up to be able to pay people like Earl Thomas caliber players, etc., to keep the core of the team together. But in the long term, what's the true effect? I mean, we haven't seen it long term in the NBA yet. We haven't seen it long term anywhere else.
Well, actually, in the NBA, look at the salaries. I mean, these guys are making hundreds of millions of dollars. And NBA is a different animal in that there's only, I think, 10, 12 players on the team.
Yeah.
So
they can spread the wealth out better.
12 player contracts, etc. And I don't know that it's really not a good comparison, I don't think.
No.
And it might work well for them. They don't do it in baseball. I don't think they do it in hockey.
No, I don't think they do it in hockey either, but I know in baseball they do pretty much guarantee the life of the contract too.
Yes, they all.
I mean, A-Rod was getting paid by us and the Rangers when he was at New York as well.
Yeah, no, there are guaranteed contracts in the Major League Baseball, that's for sure. And more, we're getting moving more toward guaranteed contracts in the NFL for particular players. I think one of the things that was significant about this free agency period is there were only 13 or 14 guys that got the mega deals. Everyone else was just getting jobs.
Yeah.
And, and granted, a veteran minimum in the NFL now is almost $1 million. So that's a great job to have. But they're not getting the big deals. And there weren't a lot of them that went around this free agency period.
No, and that's just it, is that most of the big things that happened were trades more than anything.
Oh, yeah.
During this offseason.
I heard today Pat was saying that there were 47 trades that revolve around the draft this year. So already 47 picks have been moved to other teams that will be making those picks in exchange for players.
Yeah, I'm looking at the I have the NFL draft tracker pulled up, and it's actually not until you get to pick 17 that you have a swap. You have Cleveland and New York. Chicago, then 24 Chicago and Oakland, and then 27 Dallas and Oakland, Green Bay and New Orleans at 30. I mean, it's not a lot of movement in the first round still, but you can go to the other rounds and you'll start to see where everything is.
Let's move to the draft then.
Sounds good to me.
I'm pretty excited about this, to be perfectly honest. I'm dying to see what Arizona does.
Yeah, let me get my window pulled up here.
I don't believe personally that the Kyler Murray thing is going to happen. I just don't. They take an $8 million cap hit if they trade Rosen, and they can't. I think it's too soon to close the book on Rosen, and also this is a team with a lot of needs. They have some real serious holes in this roster, and I don't know that quarterback is the top of that list. And if you're going to pass on a Nick Bosa or a Quinnen Williams or a Josh Allen, you better be damn sure what you're doing, because you're going to live with this for the next 5 years. If it's a mistake, it'll take you that long to recover. Whereas if you get a day one starter that can come in and sack somebody, that's going to be a much, much bigger improvement to your team than bringing in a quarterback.
Oh yeah, I totally agree. Because I mean, yes, quarterback is a very important position, especially for the offense, obviously. But you have to have a team built around that position. Otherwise, if all you have is a star quarterback, you're going to end up like the Detroit Lions, like the Cleveland Browns and whatnot, where you might get better, but you can't break that threshold to get to the playoffs because you don't have the rest of the team to support.
I loved what Moving the Chains did with their mock drafts, and alternating picks, of course, also always helps, but only picking Kyler Murray once in the 4 drafts I thought was really significant. And it shows you what happens. If he is picked number 1 overall, it affects the next 6, 7 picks pretty substantially. I did really like what they did with it on week 4, where they traded down. Pat traded out of number 1. He traded down to number 10 and still took Kyler Murray at number 10, which to me is the best philosophy of the bunch for Arizona. If they're really talking about drafting this kid, drop down, pick up more picks and take him lower down. Challenge. No one else is going to pick him up. He's not on anybody else's draft board. I think the next team that might be interested would be Miami, and they're 13. So that gives you a lot of room to drop down.
Yep. And speaking of their draft, let me pull up all those images that I downloaded. Give me just a second here. So I've pinned you to the foreground for the moment for the.
Oh, and isn't everyone lucky for that?
And obviously they'll have one more mock draft this Friday.
Yeah, I'm going to be the Chargers GM for that and make the Chargers pick at 28.
Yeah. So let me stop presenting you, and I'll present myself right now. So here's their first one, actually mock draft number 2. So I didn't even get the first one in here yet. But still, number 2, you can see Kyler Murray at 5 to Arizona via a trade. I mean, I could actually see Tampa wanting to do that. I don't know if they would ever pull the trigger.
Well, they're moving up from
5.
5. Okay.
Yeah.
I might do that if I was Tampa Bay.
Yeah. Yeah, Arizona trades the number 1 overall pick for number 5 plus 130 and a 2020 second round pick plus Gerald
McCoy.
And you still get Kyler Murray? If that happened, Arizona also trades Josh Rosen to Miami for picks 48 and 1. That is
that I remember when he did that. That seems kind of arbitrary to me, but
yeah,
certainly a possibility.
O-line Cody Ford for Seattle. What did the Chargers have? Rock Ya-Sin.
And I've been looking at these top guys over the last couple of days, and I'm being a Charger fan that I am, and Joey Bosa's had some health issues. He's missed quite a few games here in his first 3 years. The fact that Nick Bosa's coming off an injury doesn't really encourage me a lot. Quinnen Williams, I think, is a tremendous talent. But I'm kind of leading right now more towards Josh Allen as being the number one player in this draft. And I can see somebody making the trade up. And I don't know that anyone would give him too much garbage if somebody were to move up and take Josh Allen number one overall.
Right.
They seem to be all pretty much, graded in the same area. But to me, from the footage that I've watched and just listening to these guys talk and being interviewed, et cetera, Josh Allen is really my favorite at this point.
I see Jim took a quarterback for you in mock draft number 4.
And I've kind of warmed up to that idea a little bit. I just don't think this is the draft to do it. I don't think that Daniel Jones or Drew Lock are first round picks.
Right.
We had them both at the Senior Bowl, and I watched them there. I've listened to them on numerous different interviews, and of course, I've watched their tape. And there's the only guy in this draft that has made me go, oh, well, he can play quarterback. That's Haskins. And I think he's the best quarterback in this draft. I think he should go before any other quarterbacks. I don't know that that'll happen. Kyler Murray, as good as he is, I just see him in another long line of RG3 and Lamar Jackson and Kyler Murray and guys that aren't really quarterbacks. They're great athletes playing the quarterback position.
And
that's just the way that I look at it. But I think Haskins is the one that's got the size. He's got the arm. He came in with no experience this past year, threw 50 touchdowns. He would be the number one quarterback on my board.
Yeah, I could understand that. I haven't followed too much of the quarterbacks because Seattle hasn't needed one. I'm pretty happy with our backup situation, but at the same time, it's
who is your backup?
Oh, what was his name? It's been so long.
I would have told you there was a quiz coming if I'd thought about it.
No, it's not that. I literally have been so focused on computer and politics lately and stuff at work that I have totally just not even paid attention to the team. So let me pull that up real quick.
We just signed Tyrod Taylor to back up Phillip Rivers, which everyone breathed a sigh of relief that Geno Smith was gone.
Of course, they don't have the fake.
Oh my goodness, that guy! I'll tell you, I don't know how he stayed in the league as long as he did. He in one game versus Arizona last year, Phillip Rivers went 28 of 29, and we had a huge lead. They pulled him out, and Geno Smith went in and went 0 for 5.
Oh, that's right. We picked up Paxton Lynch this year.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah. We still have Cam Chancellor on the roster, even though he's retired. That's funny.
So you got issues at backup quarterback too.
Yeah, I think Paxton could be a good backup with us. I think his play style is actually really fits our mold, but at the same time he's got to settle down. That's the biggest thing.
Well, at that position too, you or I would be good backups unless we had to go in and play. So that's kind of the way that that it falls out.
Looking at the offensive style, I think our offensive style would fit him better, especially if our running back situation can hold up. My biggest concern, just like every year right now, has been our offensive line. Can it stay together?
Yeah.
Well, let's see. So Arizona's top needs, according to NFL.com, are cornerback, DL, O-line, tight end, and wide receiver.
Yeah, and defense.
Pretty much. I mean, you should just throw a linebacker right there too.
Yeah, absolutely. That's why it would be such a huge thing to lose that opportunity to get a player that good to take a quarterback that's undersized at the number one overall pick. This isn't at all like it was last year with Baker Mayfield. Mayfield is got a great strong body. He had a big body of work behind him, and he's just a much different player than Kyler Murray is. And granted, every time Kyler Murray got on the field, he made sparks fly. I just don't know that it translates.
Yeah, I totally understand that because it's one of those things when you go from each level, you lose the weakest links.
Yeah.
And so, and when you're talking about the NFL, it's like what the top 1-2% of all football players in the country. You know,
Oh, if that.
yeah,
There's a statistic like if you played high school football, you have like a 1.5 million chance of playing professional.
exactly.
It's crazy.
Um, but at the same time, if a player can have that flair that they have in college and it translates to the pro level, a la a Russell Wilson, you know, he had the flair. He was noticed at Wisconsin. It's just that his size is what really held him
Right,
back.
but he's not built the same way Kyler Murray is.
No, I understand entirely. I'm not.
I mean, Russell Wilson is pardon my language, a brick shithouse. Kyler Murray isn't. So,
yeah,
you know, I'm looking at this too, and I'm reminded of the draft, I don't know, 10, 12 years ago when it was Vince Young, Reggie Bush, and Mario Williams.
Yeah.
And the big debate was, who do you take? Who does Houston take? Vince Young or Reggie Bush? Vince Young or Reggie Bush? And I remember I was driving someplace, listening to the radio the day before the draft, and all of a sudden it hit me, and I went, what if they take Mario Williams? What if they just jump over those two guys and take Mario Williams #1 overall? And I remember I called in and mentioned that, and the guys kind of went, well, yeah, it could happen. I don't see it, but yeah, it could happen. And sure enough, that's what happened, you know. And then New Orleans was scrambling, and Tennessee was scrambling because they had the next 2 picks.
Yeah.
And you know, Reggie ends up going to New Orleans and Vince to Tennessee, and Reggie had a good career. I mean, he had a decent career. Vince didn't really. He never really got over himself, I don't think.
Yeah, the first couple of years at Tennessee, he looked like he was going to do great, and then he just got so full of himself.
And I'm kind of looking at this right now, kind of thinking the same way. Everyone's assuming that if it's not Kyler Murray, it's going to be Nick Bosa.
Mm-hmm.
But what if it's Josh Allen?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the kid had 17 sacks last year. He's got 4.6 speed in the 40, coming off the edge. That's really good. Good strength. He put up 28 lifts, and Gil Brandt is saying that he's going to be a Pro Bowl perennial and an instant NFL starter. So, and he's a senior. He graduated as a senior, which to me, that means a lot to me in the draft, because if you've stayed in college all that time, you're coming out with all that experience and you're so much more mature. Once you hit the field, it's a huge advantage to these guys, I think.
Mm-hmm. You know, like Jim and Pat say, you know, the only position that I really would like to see, that I wouldn't say like to see, but I'd be more okay with them coming out early, is a running back.
Yes, I agree 100%.
But at the same time, being able to get the reps, because I mean, for lack of a better phrase, the NCAA football programs are our minor league system for pro football.
Oh yeah, no question.
I mean, NHL has their minor league system, much like Major League Baseball. The NBA has the D League.
And they have to pay for all those things. The NFL doesn't have to pay for the NCAA.
Exactly.
They just treat them like they treat them, and it's fine. And they've got those really stupid rules in place just to placate the NCAA of, you know, you can't join your team until your class is graduated and all that other stuff.
Yeah.
So you end up missing mini camps and what have you, which is just foolish at this point in time.
Yeah.
But the NCAA has to maintain that objective of education.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't disagree with them. I just think that in 1 or 2 cases, you can make an exception, which would be the guy that gets drafted from your school, you know,
I mean,
as opposed to the other 5,000 students that are graduating that year.
I know. My biggest thing is, like, if you've completed the coursework, like if you are a, you know, senior or redshirt senior, and then you're graduating or have, you know, gotten your degree, just let them go, you know?
Oh, if you've graduated, you can go. You can attend mini camps and stuff.
Oh yeah, yeah.
You come out early, or you haven't finished your senior year and your class hasn't graduated yet.
Yeah.
And it's always, you know, Stanford and Washington, and although a lot of the West Coast teams that are on the quarter system go into mid-June.
Yeah.
And these guys are, you know, sitting at the door of training camp waiting to get in, and they can't let them in.
Yeah, because my thought is, like, for example, if you're a senior and you're graduating, say you like finish up that December, but you're not officially slated to graduate till June. If you have no coursework during that period, why even make you stay? You know?
So
because there are those players that just they plug away even during the quote unquote off season of college during the summer, and are still going to school and getting stuff done because they want to be done with it and not have to worry about it.
So I was doing I do a little radio talk thing here in Vegas once every couple of weeks, and we were on last Friday and started talking about the draft, and of course immediately everyone else on the panel jumped to the quarterbacks, and I think that's doing a real disservice to this draft because this draft is so defensive heavy at the top with some pretty spectacular players. I'm really excited to see where these guys go, how they fall out, and more importantly, how they end up performing next year. Because I think there's 14 or 15 guys in this first round that are going to be starters from day one.
Well, yeah, let's take a look at the various NFL mock drafts really quick. From the different people. I mean, let's take a look at Oakland. Defense, 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 defense.
Yep.
Oh, well, they even have a trade there.
All the way across the board, you've got, except for round one when everyone thinks Kyler Murray's going. Mm-hmm. But then one guy's got Drew Lock as the second overall pick in the draft to San Francisco.
Which is then promptly traded to the Raiders.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
And so
the Raiders would take Drew Lock, and the 49ers then would get Quinn Williams in this particular draft.
Yeah.
This is based on I don't see that happening either. I don't know. What do you think?
On late March.
Talk about David Carr. Derek Carr? Do we really think that they are that unhappy with him that they would make a trade like that at the top of the draft?
I don't think so. I think he's actually just fine. But at the same time, that organization, especially under Gruden, is so tight-lipped about things that it's hard to know what they're really thinking. They'll distract you with the one hand and steal from you. Try to steal something later.
I also think that I think the best move they made this offseason was Terrell Williams from the Chargers at wide receiver. I think Antonio Brown is going to, even in the last week, if I was on Twitter, I would have tweeted to him, "Hey, John Gruden said he's ready to take you to the Raiders whenever you're ready to leave the Steelers." Because he just can't let the Steelers go. He keeps coming back to these guys and commenting on stuff that happened in the past, and that attitude, bringing that into that Raider locker room, I just think is a recipe for disaster.
So it's pretty much, with the exception of Kyler Murray, number one, the next 4 picks are all defense, with the exception of this one switch right here.
5.
Well, they got Drew here, Metcalf here.
That's at 6.
Yeah, I'm talking about the next 4 picks here. Kyler Murray all the way across generally, and then the next 4 are pretty much all defense. And you have and I could see the Giants actually taking a quarterback out.
I can see that too. I think it will be Haskins, not Daniel Jones, but
I agree. Wow, Taylor to Jacksonville. 1, 2, 3, 4. 6 out of 7 times. Wow. Now, granted, some of these are from like mid to late March, so they haven't been updated. But Casterly and Charles Davis. Now, it's interesting. I got a notification from NFL.com about Daniel Jeremiah's latest mock draft.
Right.
And the way they made it sound is that they could see the Seahawks actually taking a quarterback in round 1 or 2.
Yeah, that was before the deal.
Oh, that was this morning, actually.
Really? I don't know why people had it in their head that Russell Wilson was ever going to leave Seattle. That was just like, that's crazy talk to me.
I said the only way that I could see it happening, of him leaving the Seahawks, is if somebody that really needed a quarterback traded away their entire draft for him and like literally just some crazy
Yeah,
deal that the Jets can turn down.
What would Seattle do at that point? They don't have a quarterback then.
I know.
They'd like never make that deal. That's what I'm saying. They would never make that deal.
I know.
It's just like, and why people are, we're talking about it for so much. I just shook my head every time someone would call in, and say, yeah, well, if Russell Wilson's free, well, yeah, if Tom Brady was free and he was 22, that would be great.
Or Aaron Rodgers back in his late 20s, but it's just one of those things, it's the draft, speculation, free agency. I mean, what's Russell gonna do? Which he's still under contract before the signing. Obviously, he was still under contract for this year at the bare minimum. So I mean, he's either gonna play or he's gonna sit out.
No, I don't think
he ain't gonna sit out.
He was just gonna play and save negotiations for next off season.
Mm-hmm. But again, most people weren't reading that, even though that's exactly what he said.
Yeah.
So it's just one of those things. I always find it funny when saying that. Is there any particular team that you're interested in general that we haven't touched on yet?
Because it's me, we should talk about the Chargers. It's interesting for me this year because we're at number 28. We haven't had a draft pick this high in a long, long time. So it's kind of, I've been, as I said, I'm going to do the mock draft on Friday for Moving the Chains. And I've got a handful of guys that I think are going to be available. And I think that would be great for us.
Well, don't tip your hand.
Yeah, I know what I want. And I'll just have to wait and see if that happens. In some of the mock drafts I've been watching, this player has dropped to us. In others, he hasn't. And it's just it's going to be an interesting situation. Our first needs, I think, are defensive tackle, secondary, linebacker, offensive tackle. And I'm not really looking much at the offensive tackles because there's not going to be one there by the time we get to 28 that's worth the first overall. So I'm going to keep my eyes open on the secondary because I think that's most likely what's going to be available for us at that point in time. And there's a couple of guys that are, really highly rated, and I've been looking at that are playing really smart and really well. And so we'll see how it turns out. But picking at 28, I'm so out of practice for this. 4 years ago we were 3, and then we were 7, and now last year we were 17. And last year, of course, we had one of the best players in the draft drop to us. So I've got my fingers crossed for that happening again.
So yeah, this is an interesting one. We haven't talked much about Atlanta at all during our 2 other podcasts. That, by the way, the second one will be posted later today. I just built my new computer and trying to get everything situated with that and making sure the stream quality would be working for this. Kind of threw me for a loop in getting that posted. So I just got to transfer the files from the laptop to this computer to take care of it. But I don't know that I necessarily agree with cornerback as one of their major concerns. I would probably put that as a third, because I think that they need definitely inside and outside help, as it says here on the D line. But I also think they need a couple more linebackers that can help put pressure, or at least threaten the pass rush or coverage. You know what I mean?
Yeah. In my mind, I think offensive line is the biggest need for the Falcons, to be perfectly honest.
That I wouldn't argue with that either, because they're having a problem keeping Matt Ryan upright, let alone letting a running back get through holes. I mean, they're sitting in a situation much like the Seahawks, where some games you would swear this offensive line is the second coming of Emmitt Smith's offensive line that he ran behind.
Right.
And then there's other times you're just like, is the line even out there?
They had a lot of injuries though, and they're getting a lot of players back. So that's going to help them tremendously. So it's kind of hard to say because we didn't really see the real Falcon team last year.
No, we didn't. Staying in the NFC South for a minute. Carolina Panthers. Julius Peppers retired. Obviously, that's a big one. Bruce Irvin is a Band-Aid. Yeah. Bruce Irvin, I don't know what happened to him when he went to the Raiders. It didn't seem to click like he was clicking in Seattle with our linebacker core, you know?
Yeah, that happens a lot. But, it might have been the system and the people around him made him look a lot better. Mm-hmm. And then suddenly when he became the man, he wasn't quite as good as everyone thought that he was.
Yeah. So, that's the thing is when you're playing in a great defense like we had with our defense during the 2 Super Bowl runs, it's so easy to make it for you to look good because everybody else is being thrown away from or ran away from, you know?
Right.
So all you have to do is make a play.
The Panthers, to me, I don't know that anybody shares this opinion, and I apologize if you don't. I am not a Cam Newton fan. I thought that from the time that he lost that Super Bowl several years back, he has disappeared. And sometime this past season, apparently it was injury, but I remember having a discussion with a buddy of mine, and I looked at him, I said, I got to tell you, I don't think he's the man. And I just don't. He had a nice run up to that Super Bowl, but that loss devastated him, and he hasn't been the same player since. And if I'm Carolina, I'd give it another year, but I'm looking. I wouldn't be surprised to see Carolina pick a quarterback in the 3rd or 4th round.
I wouldn't be either. I agree that Cam has been so used to being on top, like nearly 100% of the time when he's played in, high school, college, and all that. But when he got to the pros, I think his ego took a bruising that he just hasn't been able to recover. And then
that's a great way to put it.
And then you add on top of it, the loss to the Super Bowl to the Broncos. That just kind of kills it, you know?
Yeah. He I just don't have any faith in him, and his style of play has caught up with him, and he's beaten up now. And they're talking about whether or not he can play this year at all. And I don't know I haven't heard an update on him. So that'll be an interesting situation to see because they're going to have some big questions to ask if he can't get on the field.
Yeah, I totally get that because his style of play is much like early Russell Wilson. But the difference is Russell Wilson, as soon as he started getting hurt, he realized I have to be more in the pocket. But I think one thing Russell has done that has been a detriment is he's staying in the pocket too much. He's relying on his offensive line too much. You could see it this last season with Russell. He was spending way too much time in the pocket.
Well, he's also one of those guys that he knows when to get down. He won't. He won't challenge. He won't challenge a tackler, and as that's the smartest way to play in the NFL if you're a quarterback, because you're going to lose. These guys are like paid assassins coming down for you, and there's no reason to give them a shot.
Yeah, I totally understand that.
All right, so you got Jacksonville highlighted here.
Yeah, I thought with the move for Nick Foles that I wanted to see kind of what the NFL.com staff's thinking for him. And I really don't see an issue with the order here because, they do need an offensive line help to keep him protected, but also to allow Leonard Fournette to run as well.
I think this could be one of the most dangerous teams in the league if they get their head together.
Oh, yeah. I mean,
there's so much extemporaneous stuff flying around in that locker room and on the field. And, Jalen Ramsey needs to just play football and stop, trying to be, Beckham Jr. and just be quiet and play.
Yeah.
And there's so much talent on that team. Think if Nick Foles had quarterbacked that Jaguar team 2 seasons ago.
I honestly think I don't think they would have gotten to the Super Bowl, but I think they would have been deep into the playoffs.
Well, they were one play away from the Super Bowl in the AFC Championship game against New England. If you've got Nick Foles playing playing quarterback for them instead of Bortles, they could easily have beaten the Patriots and gone to the Super Bowl and won.
Yeah, I think though that they could have also continually been able to go back keep going back to the playoffs. So I mean, it's Nick Foles is one of those players, though. It's like he can turn it on, but then it's just like the rest of the year you're like, where did he go? Because I think he played.
Yeah, there's no. He is, whether he's a legitimate starter has yet to be proven, but he is still, even at his inconsistent best, he is so much better than Blake Bortles was, and he's a playoff guy. He's the end of the season playoff guy, and it's the regular season and him starting every week. It's the the pressure and the anticipation of having to be great, as opposed to coming out off the bench with no expectations. And that's a great feeling when you go out there and there's no pressure. You can just go out and play and nobody expects anything. It's a whole different ball game.
Oh, I totally agree, because I think Jacksonville, though, while they're drafting, 7th, they really should be drafting more around 20 in my opinion, if not even deeper into the playoff part of the draft. Consistently, but again, the big holdback was Blake Bortles and the quarterback situation.
Yeah.
But another surprise team that I think people, while they're talking about it, I've heard it mentioned several times this offseason, just talking to people in general, is going to be the Cleveland Browns, and they don't have a pick in the first round this year.
No, they do. They don't have a pick in the first round. New Orleans doesn't have a pick in the first round. Chicago doesn't have a pick. Chicago doesn't have a pick until round 3.
Yeah.
So
and does Dallas? It doesn't look like Dallas has one either.
Did Dallas give it away? Yeah, Dallas gave it away for Amari Cooper.
Yep.
And who else? The other one that the Raiders got from Dallas and Chicago. Yeah, okay, Chicago, Dallas.
Yeah, and then their own pick, I think they have up here somewhere too. Yeah, it's number 3. Number 4, yeah. It's just but I really think Cleveland is going to be that surprise team. Do I think they're going to win the AFC North? No, not a chance. Do I think they're going to make the playoffs? Probably not, but I think they will be. I think they'll be above 500 team this year, easy.
And you look at, and then you look at the other teams in that division. You got Cincinnati with a new coach coming in. They've lost a lot of their defensive players. There's a lot of change there, so we don't really know what's going to be coming out of Cincinnati. You go to Baltimore, and I'm sorry, I think Baltimore sealed their fate when they made the choice to go with Lamar Jackson. And I think that the Chargers showed the league how to beat Lamar Jackson. And if he doesn't come out as a totally different player this year, I think Baltimore is in the basement in that division.
And I can definitely see that. I can also alternately see the Bengals in the bottom as well, because again, like you said, we don't know what.
Yeah, we don't. We really don't know much about what's going to happen with them. And then the Steelers. We'll see. Last season might have been an aberration, because I think there's a mentality in Seattle or in Pittsburgh that's much different than it used to be. And now that, Le'Veon Bell and Antonio Brown and all those problems are gone, if they turn their heads back around and get out and play football the way that they, are capable of playing football, it could be a big difference. I still think they have some defensive weaknesses, but they should be a better team than they were last year, which brings us back to Cleveland. And quite frankly, I don't see there's any reason that if Cleveland plays up to its potential, big if,
yep.
I think they could win the North.
And
I think they could also be a wild card.
Oh, I could think they could be a wild card, definitely. I don't think Pittsburgh would allow them to do that. I think Pittsburgh's big issue last year. Pittsburgh's big issue last year.
Are they going to take a vote on it and say, "I'm sorry, but we voted that Cleveland cannot win the division"?
Well, again, it's one of those. It's one of those things. I think the team and the fans were putting too much faith in Le'Veon to come back that they never were able to get up and going. You know what I mean?
It could be.
And I think now that the distractions are for the most part gone, you never know who's going to be the next problem child. I foresee them kind of coming back to what they were before. I think Tomlin's still there, right?
Yep.
Yeah. I think that Tomlin actually is going to help them get back on track. I think if they don't get back on track this year, Tomlin's gone next year.
That very well could be, and that's a big move for Pittsburgh because they've never fired a coach.
No, they let the coach go on his own terms, yeah. But again, I think that the the fact that they've been fluctuating so much the last half decade or so, yes, they've always been, first or second generally. I think one year they were third in the division. But they just in general they haven't been consistent. And a lot of that has been Antonio Brown and Le'Veon Bell's belly aching. And it's easy for us to sit here and call them children and belly aching for their contracts and whatnot because
well,
we don't play football.
When you have a situation like this, and you've had for the last several years, players that have Martavis, is it Brown? Martavis Brown?
Bryant, I think.
Bryant, yes. He was a malcontent. And then you had, Bell, and you have Antonio Brown, and there's an atmosphere I think that's pervasive in Pittsburgh right now that's not good. Oh God, I hate being old like this. The guy sat out a year so he didn't have to play in Pittsburgh. He gave up $14 million to not play in Pittsburgh, and then signs a contract that doesn't get that money back. He just lost $14 million, and that was more tasteful to him than going back and playing. And you can't just let that go. You have to say, well, there's got to be a reason for this.
Yeah. I honestly think that the biggest thing that most of these players who are Le'Veon Bell like that maybe won't sit out for the whole year, but push the envelope on the contract deals and the signing of the tags. I get it. It's a 1 year guarantee, and then you're not guaranteed anything after that. I get that. But at the same time, if you really are competitive and want to play football and win, have potential for the Super Bowl and all that, you would sign that tag and you would come to work. You might wait till training camp's over, but you'll sign that tag.
Right. But unless there's something that just says inside of you, I can't go back into that room.
And we don't know what's really there either. I mean, we don't know what it was like for Le'Veon Bell. And that's what I try to give those players is like, I don't know what's going on inside the locker room, that maybe there is something there that's a little poisonous to them that they're done with. But they don't want to make it public because, it's just something minor that they're done with, I mean, like, just to take an example from my perspective at work, I've got coworkers that if I have to work with them, I just like, no, I don't want to be here at work. But then there are other times, but I don't say anything to anybody because it's like, it's petty stuff because it's just, they're not picking up on things,
Right.
And that very well could be what Le'Veon Bell was going up against. And without knowing that, I try to give all players that benefit of the doubt until something comes out later that it's like, oh yeah, all it was is he just didn't want to play in Pittsburgh. And I'm like, well, you're just being a baby at that point.
Here's another interesting thought. I've always thought this was kind of crazy. I'm looking at the NFL homepage, NFL.com homepage, and they're running a little sequence now on whose stock is up and whose stock is down. And this cracks me up every single year because none of these guys have played football in 4 or 5 months. And in that period of time, they've either gotten better or they've gotten worse. And I've never understood how that could possibly happen. You have a guy like Riley Ridley, who wide receiver out of Georgia, who a month ago, everyone talked about as being one of the top 5 wide receivers in the draft. Now his stock is down. And I don't know why. It always happens with the quarterbacks. You've got one guy in the class that's a first rounder, and then you look for the other 3 or 4 guys. Who are the next 3 or 4 guys? And when you finally get those next 3 or 4 guys, now everyone's talking about them in the first round. And they're just not gonna become first round players. They're not going to come in and be franchise quarterbacks because they just don't have the skill set. But because they're quarterbacks and it's the first round, you got to take 3 or 4 of them.
Yep. I thought this is hilarious. 5 Super Bowl ready teams. Cleveland Browns.
There you go.
I mean, like, it's not out of the realm of possibility. And I know this, but at the same time, it's just like, I can't I can't get my hopes up for them. It's not that I don't want them to succeed. It's just that I feel that eventually I'm going to get betrayed, so to speak. And I'm not even a fan of the team.
The thing about that is I think the Chargers should be there instead of the Bears.
Oh yeah, definitely. So tomorrow at 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 Pacific, the schedule will be announced.
Always a big day in my house.
Yep. I'm looking forward to it. While I understand the kickoff game being the Packers and the Bears, I get it. Something just doesn't sit with me, the fact that it's not the Super Bowl winner, although it's the Patriots, so I don't really care.
Yeah, no, I kind of like that. It's a nice tribute to the 100th year anniversary.
Exactly.
I have some breaking news here. Just came across the wire. One of the most iconic looks in sports will now be worn more often, as the Los Angeles Chargers announced today that the team will wear powder blue as its primary home uniform color during the 2019 season. So everyone that loves those powder blue throwback uniforms, and so far I've never met anyone that doesn't, congratulations. That's our primary home jersey for this season.
All right, let's see here. Do I have anything coming across Twitter right now? Not really. Oh, but I do got your Chargers one here. You're welcome.
Big news.
Yep. Ironically, though, because I'm not following just like the Seahawks and just NFL in general. I'm trying to get all the teams' Twitter accounts on here, because this is actually the actual Serious Football Heads Twitter account that I'm looking at Heads Serious, because that's the only thing that was available. Andrew Siciliano. Would any other NFL QB announce his contract extension from bed, like Russell Wilson? That's
because when he saw the bottom number, he fainted.
Yeah.
There's another thing that just came across. Kyler Murray will not be enjoying a trip to our nation's capital after all. He no longer has plans to visit the Washington Redskins.
Oh, well, he might be drafting.
Well, the thing is, why would he do that? Well, maybe he's already been told by the Cardinals that he is the pick.
It is. He could also have been told that by, Tampa Bay, New York, any of these teams.
Yeah.
I mean, I know that San Francisco has Jimmy Garoppolo, but I don't trust their backup situation there. They could easily take Kyler Murray as an insurance policy. The Jets definitely need a quarterback upgrade.
Oh yeah, no, they need a quarterback in Washington, that's for sure.
Yeah. Now, is Kyler Murray going to make it to 15 though? I highly doubt that.
I don't know. Who's going to take him in front of that? The Dolphins?
Well, the Dolphins is a little questionable because they do need a QB, but they also have many other needs that they need to fill before I think they go and get that star quarterback. And again, like you said, I don't think there's that many in this draft this year anyway. So
yeah, but if you look at the top picks, and there's been tons of discussion about this, but if Arizona picks somebody else and Kyler Murray then starts to drop, where does he drop to? I mean, he could drop out of the first round. I don't think that would happen, but he certainly could.
Well, this is where they're drafting at 13. I highly doubt a guard is going to get picked anywhere before there, but there's only one QB in that area too, according to grades here on NFL.com, and that is Kyler Murray. So although Dwayne Haskins isn't too much further below that either. Let's see here. What else can we talk about? Talk about our mock draft coming up. Right
now, for anyone that's listening, if you'd like to participate in our mock draft, we'd love to have you. We don't have enough guys right now to do it, really. We have 8 that have committed. Well, kind of committed. 2 of them will have committed if they don't have something better to do. And I've been putting out emails, and I've been on the air, and I've posted on Facebook. So if you're interested, give us a call. And we have a setup where we'll be able to, Jay has this set up so that we'll be able to all see each other. Is that correct?
Yep. So what I'll be doing is I'll be hosting a much like the setup we've got going on here now, which is Google Hangouts. We're actually going to be using what's called Google Meet. It is a closed system, so it doesn't actually broadcast directly to YouTube. But what I'm going to be doing is actually hosting the stream here on our YouTube channel via Meet. And all that we need from you is bare minimum a computer or a good cell phone connection and a microphone. Preferably a computer with a microphone, with like either something like we have, or even just your earbud headphones that you get with your phone, your smartphones. Just so that way we're not getting any feedback on the line from your speakers, things like that. But it's really simple. Tom, I'll give him the link to email out to you guys. All you have to do is paste it into preferably Google Chrome as your browser. Safari should work with Meets. Is that what you were using before?
No, we were using GoToMeeting.
Oh, no. I mean, for our podcast that we've been doing the previous two, what browser were you using?
I was on Chrome.
Okay. I know Firefox doesn't work very well with Meet, but the iOS, I have a few people that I believe use Safari, or they're using Chrome on iOS. So I don't know specifically. If you are using a phone, it's what's it called? Meets. Taking a look here. I think about it. I downloaded it just so that way if I'm driving when I do my Veterans Hangout, I can still be a part of it. It's just called Meet, MEET. So, yeah, it's going to be a fun event. I really would like to see at least 4 to 6 more guys.
Yeah, the way we've got it set up, and we've done it the last couple of years, is we get 16 guys to commit. Everybody takes 2 teams. And then if other people join in and they want, one of those second teams, then we just pass that off to them, so they have their team of choice.
Mm-hmm.
And then if there is a hole for some reason, I have been saving the mock drafts from moving the chains, and I just go back and refer to those, and whatever slot that the guys took, that's the player we'll put in.
Mm-hmm. That sounds fine. And if in the event that we can't actually get the mock draft going the way we like it, I still might do a live stream and maybe just do my own mock draft here on NFL.com. I don't know if you saw that on the homepage, or is it on their actual draft board here? They have an ad for predict the draft, and I might just do that online here, and you guys can yell at me all you want. We'll go quarterback for everybody. Do the Oprah thing. Quarterback for you.
Yeah, you get a quarterback. You get a quarterback.
But I really look forward to doing an actual mock draft again. And I loved what we used to do when Kerry Hazelton was doing it. Is he's basically updating a website with the mock draft. What I plan on doing is seeing if I can get a scrolling text going down that has all of our picks. And if you give me enough time, I can try and get even updating the file for trades that happen while we're doing this too. So that way I can get those all proper. So I'm working on that the next couple of days too. So
cool. All right.
So anything
I'm thinking we've pretty much covered it here.
Yeah. Anything you're looking forward to after the draft? Anything big that you think might happen?
Oh, well, there's an awful lot of guys that are still out on the street. And I think once the draft happens, we'll start seeing some of those guys get signed. And then after that, there's been so much change this year. it's really a different type of offseason for some reason. So many teams have changed their personality and changed their overall outlook. I'm really intrigued to see how it all plays out and who ends up, with the most coherent squad.
Yeah, well, we all know the Patriots are going to have one, so I mean, we might as well check that one off. And it's one of those things. It's like I want to be able to say, I like to, by the time training camp starts, I like to have a rough idea of my division winners and my wild cards. And obviously I funnel it down as the preseason goes along, injuries, things like that, and make my changes. I don't know that I'm going to be able to have that by August 1st, or even by the time the first training camps open up, because it's so many changes. Not just talking drafts. I'm talking like coaching and personnel, or coaching and staff changes, as well as player changes. Oakland's intriguing. Obviously, we've said Cleveland's intriguing. I think the biggest sleeper team when it comes to this draft, how their grade is, how they do, that will surprise me the most, is going to be probably the Buffalo Bills. If they can get a better team around the quarterback, I don't see why they can't be at least, obviously they're not going to dethrone the Patriots while Tom Brady's there, unless Tom Brady gets hurt. But I think they could actually become a definite number 2 in that division,
Oh yeah. Yep.
So, all right. Well, with that, I think we'll close it out here, unless you have anything else you'd like to say.
No, I'm good. I'm just excited about this mock draft coming up. I'm very excited about the actual draft. I've cleared my calendar for the high holy days, and I am ready to roll.
All right. Well, I will update. I'll steal your email for this, and I'll update the description for this live stream to include a contact email to get a hold of you for the confirmation of the draft.
Very good.
All right.
Okay.
Have a good one.
Have a good one, everybody. Talk to you next time.